Barack Obama disguised himself as homeless. What happened next shocked everyone. The soft glow of the evening news flickered across the living room, casting long shadows as Barack Obama sat in his favorite chair, hands clasped, his expression unreadable. The only sound was the voice of a reporter recounting yet another incident of police brutality. On screen, a disheveled man, his dark skin caked with dirt, was shoved against a patrol car by two officers. One of them barked something inaudible, but the look on his face said it all, pure disdain. The man cried out, though whether in pain or defiance was unclear. The footage cut abruptly, replaced by the reporter's solemn expression. The police department has yet to release a statement. Obama leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. This wasn't new. He had seen it time and time again, another thread in the tightly woven fabric of systemic injustice. As president, he had fought to change it. Policies, speeches, reforms. And yet, watching this now, he felt something he hadn't in years. Frustration. A deep, unshakable feeling that the progress he had worked for was fragile, too easily unraveled by ignorance and hate. The kitchen door swung open, and Michelle walked in, balancing 2 mugs of tea. She placed one in front of him and sat beside him, her eyes tracing his to the screen. "Another one?" she asked quietly. He exhaled, nodding. "It never stops, does it?" She steadied his face, the familiar crease between his brows, a telltale sign of his frustration. "You can't carry it all, Barack. You've done more than anyone could ask." "Have I, though?" He picked up his mug, staring into the steam as if it held an answer. "I watch this, and I wonder, have we moved the needle at all?" Michelle reached for his arm, her touch warm, grounding. "You gave people hope." "Hope isn't enough," he muttered. "Not when the same cycle keeps repeating." His voice hardened. "I need to see it. Feel it. Not from the outside. From inside their world." Michelle tilted her head, sensing the shift in his tone. "What are you saying?" He hesitated, knowing she'd push back. "I need to get closer. Experience what they experience." Her eyes narrowed. "You mean, go undercover?" "Exactly." His voice was firm. "Not just observe. Live it." Michelle frowned, concern flashing across her face. "Barack, that's dangerous. You don't know what could happen out there. People know your face." "That's the point," he countered. "If even I can't escape this kind of treatment, what chance do millions of others have?" Their conversation stretched late into the night, Michelle urging caution, Obama insisting on action. By the time they went to bed, she hadn't agreed. But she hadn't stopped him either. The idea had taken root. There was no turning back. The disguise. The next morning, Obama reached out to a few trusted former aides, laying out his plan. Predictably, they weren't thrilled. "Mr. President," one of them began, still calling him that out of habit, "this could go very wrong. You're not just any civilian. What if someone recognizes you? What if you get hurt?" "I'm not asking for permission," he said, his tone unwavering. "I'm asking for your help." Reluctantly, they agreed. A former security expert helped him prepare. A week later, Obama stood in front of a full-length mirror in a nondescript hotel room. The man looking back at him was a stranger. His usually impeccable appearance was gone, his face roughened with dirt and makeup, streaks of gray dusting his hair. His clothes? A second-hand coat with a tear in the sleeve, scuffed boots, a stained shirt. He adjusted the hood of his jacket, pulling it low over his forehead. Even he barely recognized himself. For the first time in years, he felt invisible. Stepping out into the bustling streets, the city swallowed him whole. At first, nothing happened. People brushed past him without a second glance, their eyes sliding over him as if he were part of the sidewalk. Hours passed as he wandered, through busy intersections, past coffee shops, blending into the crowds of workers, tourists, and street performers. Eventually, he found himself in a small park. Here, The city's forgotten huddled together, some on benches, others under makeshift shelters. He hesitated, unsure how to approach. But then, a man, weathered, gray-bearded, eyes sharp despite the wear of life, waved him over. "First time out here?" the man asked, his voice rough but not unkind. Obama nodded. And in that moment, his journey into an unseen world truly began. What happened next? What he saw, what he felt, it changed everything. Obama went undercover as a homeless man. What he discovered shocked him. Obama nodded, lowering himself onto the cold bench beside Walter. "Yeah, name's Barry." Walter chuckled, flashing a gap-toothed grin. "Stick close, Barry. These streets ain't kind to nobody, but they're especially rough on guys like us." "Like us?" Obama asked, though he already knew the answer. Walter gestured toward the street, where a police cruiser rolled by, its headlights briefly illuminating their faces. Black. Broke. In the way. That's all they see. As the evening stretched on, Walter painted a grim picture of survival, stories of indifference from passers-by, businesses that treated them like a nuisance, the constant threat of violence. It was a world far removed from the corridors of power Obama once walked. When the temperature dropped, Walter led him to a spot under an overpass where a small group huddled around a trash can fire. They made space for him, their conversation low, guarded. For the first time in years, Obama felt something unfamiliar, vulnerability. Footsteps echoed from the street above. Heads turned. Two teenagers appeared, rocks in hand, their voices filled with mocking laughter. The first stone hit the concrete wall just inches from Obama, sending shards flying. Another whizzed past Walter's shoulder. "We don't want trouble," Walter called out, hands raised. The kids only sneered, until the sudden wail of a police siren sent them scattering into the night. Relief was short-lived. The approaching patrol car slowed to a crawl, its occupants barely visible in the dim glow of the streetlights. The window rolled down. "You lot better clear out," an officer barked. "Unless you're looking for a trip downtown." Walter muttered under his breath. "Come on," he said, nudging Obama. The group dispersed. Obama's heart pounded. He had barely begun his experiment, and already the cracks in the system were glaringly obvious. That night, sleep didn't come easy. He lay awake under the overpass, the distant hum of the city above him. This was only the beginning. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new indignities, and a deeper understanding of a reality he had only glimpsed from a distance. The harsh reality of the streets. The city stirred at dawn, its streets bathed in muted gray light. Under the overpass, the chill still clung to the concrete. Obama sat up, wincing. His back ached from the makeshift bed, a piece of flattened cardboard, and the threadbare blanket Walter had lent him. The discomfort was a stark reminder of just how far he was from his old life. Walter was already up, crouched near the dying embers of last night's fire. He glanced at Obama, his face unreadable. "You'll get used to it," he said, voice roughened by years of hardship. "Or you won't. Either way, it don't change." Obama nodded, standing slowly. He dusted himself off, though the grime of the streets clung to him, a presence he couldn't shake. They walked in silence toward a nearby park, where a soup kitchen had set up its morning station. The line was already forming, a slow, shuffling procession of the weary and the hungry. Obama took his place among them. His eyes scanned the crowd, faces etched with defiance, others hollowed by despair. A silent understanding lingered in the air. This was their reality. At the front of the line, a volunteer handed him a cup of lukewarm coffee and a slice of bread. "Thank you," he murmured, stepping aside to find a seat on a low stone wall. Walter sat beside him, tearing his bread into small pieces, chewing slowly. "You see those cops?" Walter nodded toward the park's entrance. Two uniformed officers stood there, their postures relaxed, but their eyes sharp, scanning the crowd. "They like to make their presence known," Walter muttered. "Sometimes they help. But most of the time, they just remind us who's in charge." Obama frowned but said nothing. He had spent years trying to rebuild trust between communities and law enforcement. Yet here, in the space of a single night, he saw how deep the divide still ran. As they finished their meager breakfast, Obama's gaze landed on a young man sitting nearby. His clothes were tattered, his face sunken with hunger, but his eyes still held something rare on these streets: hope. The young man spoke in hushed tones to an elderly woman beside him. Obama hesitated, then stepped forward, holding out the bread he had saved. "Here," he said. The young man looked up, surprised. He hesitated, then took it with a quiet nod. "Thanks," he murmured. Obama simply nodded back. No words could fully capture what he was beginning to understand. And this was just the first day. Obama went undercover as a homeless man, then this happened. A small act of kindness. Just a piece of bread. Most people wouldn't think twice about it. Many would do the same, Obama said, though deep down, he knew that wasn't true. In a world where so little was shared, even the smallest gesture could mean everything. But before he could dwell on it, a sharp voice cut through the moment. "Hey! What's going on here?" Obama turned. One of the officers was striding toward them, hand resting on the butt of his baton. His partner followed closely behind, unreadable but watching. "What are you doing?" the first cop demanded, eyes locking onto Obama. "Just sharing some food," Obama replied calmly, raising his hand slightly to show he meant no harm. The officer's eyes narrowed. "Sharing food? Looks more like a drug deal to me." Obama blinked, caught off guard. "That's not what this is." "Don't talk back to me," the officer snapped, his tone sharper now. "Stand up. Let me see your hands." Walter stepped forward, his voice low but firm. "He didn't do anything. Leave him alone." The second officer moved fast, too fast, shoving Walter back. "Stay out of it, old man." The tension thickened. A crowd was forming, drawn in by the commotion. Phones appeared. Cameras trained on the scene. Obama exhaled slowly and rose to his feet, hands still raised. "I'm not resisting. There's no need for this." The first officer smirked, pulling out a pair of handcuffs. "We'll see about that." And then, without warning, a rough hand yanked Obama's arm behind his back. The cold bite of metal dug into his wrists. Pain shot through his shoulder as he was forced to the ground. The murmurs in the crowd grew into shouts. "He didn't do anything," someone called. But the officers didn't care. As Obama lay on the rough pavement, cheek pressed against the cold concrete, anger surged through him. This was exactly what he feared. And exactly why he had come here. The system wasn't just flawed. It was hostile. The officers hauled him to his feet, ignoring his protests and the crowd's growing outrage. One of them leaned in close, his voice a harsh whisper. "You people think you can do whatever you want." He let the words hang in the air before adding, "Not on my watch." Obama's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. He let them lead him toward the patrol car, his mind racing. The humiliation was staggering. But it was nothing compared to the realization of how often this must happen. To others. To those without witnesses. Without cameras. Without hope. As the car pulled away, the officers barely acknowledged him. Another day. Another cleanup. "Bet he's got a record as long as my arm," one of them chuckled. Obama stared out the window, his thoughts a storm of frustration and determination. This was no longer just an experiment. It was a call to action. A reminder of just how much work was still left to do. Inside the holding cell, the fluorescent lights in the station flickered, casting a cold, sterile glow over the chipped concrete walls. Obama sat on a narrow metal bench, wrists still bearing faint red marks from the cuffs. The air smelled of bleach, sweat, and something stale, something that pressed down on him as heavily as the silence. Hours had passed since they locked him in here, but the tension in his shoulders hadn't eased. The cold metal walls felt suffocating. And despite years of navigating high-pressure situations, this was different. This was raw. This was real. Every detail replayed in his mind, the officer's sneering remarks, the flashing camera phones capturing his humiliation, the cold pavement scraping against his skin. This wasn't an abstract problem. Not a political talking point. This was the unfiltered reality for millions. He closed his eyes, trying to focus his thoughts. But instead, memories surfaced. Moments that felt uncomfortably familiar. His teenage years in Hawaii. Standing in the principal's office after being falsely accused of something he didn't do. A lifetime ago. And yet, some things never change. As night fell in the holding cell, Obama leaned back against the wall. His resolve hardened. This wasn't about him. It was about those who didn't have a voice. Who didn't have a name that carried weight. Who would stay invisible, forgotten, trapped in a system designed to keep them there. If change was going to come, it had to start here. In the cold, unyielding reality of the streets. Obama went undercover as a homeless man, then this happened. The sting of humiliation. He had felt it before. Decades ago, as a teenager in Hawaii, a store clerk had followed him through the aisles, watching his every move. He hadn't stolen anything. He hadn't even touched anything. But when he left without buying, the police were already outside. Hours of questioning. Suspicion in their eyes. It had taken his grandmother's intervention to set him free. Back then, he hadn't had the words to describe what had happened. But he had known what it felt like. And now, decades later, that same sting burned through him. The sound of rattling keys yanked him back to the present. The door creaked open. 2 officers stepped inside. One of them, a tall man with sharp features and a buzz cut, held a clipboard. The other, younger, lingered in the doorway, shifting nervously. "Get up," the first officer ordered. Obama rose slowly, keeping his expression neutral. The officer gestured toward the hallway. "Follow me." The corridor outside was dimly lit, the hum of fluorescent lights bouncing off the walls. As they walked, Obama glanced at the younger officer, the one who had hesitated earlier. Their eyes met for a split second. Then the officer quickly looked away. They stepped into a small, windowless interrogation room. A metal table. 2 mismatched chairs. The officer with the clipboard pointed at the chair across from him. "Sit." Obama complied, folding his hands on the table, waiting. The officer flipped through his papers. "So," he said, voice clipped. "Why don't you tell me what you were doing in the park this morning?" "Helping someone," Obama replied evenly. The officer raised an eyebrow. "Helping someone?" He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "Funny. Looked more like a drug deal to me." "It wasn't." The officer tapped his pen against the clipboard. "Let me guess, you don't have any ID either, right?" Obama shook his head. "No." The officer smirked. "Of course not. And I'm supposed to just take your word for it?" Obama felt his patience thinning. He kept his voice steady. "You can check my fingerprints. You'll see there's nothing on my record." "Maybe," the officer said, voice laced with sarcasm. "Or maybe we find something you forgot about." He leaned forward, pen tapping rhythmically. "Either way, we'll figure it out." The younger officer shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting between Obama and his partner. "Do you even know who I am?" Obama asked quietly. The older officer scoffed. "Oh, I know exactly who you are. You're just another guy who thinks the rules don't apply to him." He leaned in, voice dropping. "Let me guess. You think you're special? That you deserve different treatment?" Obama met his gaze. "No. I'm asking for the same treatment anyone else should get." The officer let out a dry laugh. "Right. And I'm sure you've never done anything wrong in your life." He stood abruptly, slamming the clipboard onto the table. Here's the deal. You tell me the truth about what you were doing, and maybe I let you walk out of here with a warning. Keep lying? He shrugged. Then you're spending the night in a real cell. Obama's voice didn't waver. I've already told you the truth. The officer's jaw tightened. Suit yourself. He turned to the younger officer. Stay with him. I'll be back. The door slammed shut. Silence. Minutes passed. Finally, the younger officer spoke. You don't talk like the others. Obama looked up. What do you mean? The officer hesitated. You're different. The way you carry yourself. The way you talk. You're not like most of the people we bring in here. Obama steadied him. And what makes you so sure they're guilty? The officer shifted in his seat. I don't know. Sometimes you just get a feeling. Obama's eyes didn't leave his. And what about now? The officer hesitated. Looked away. I don't know. Before Obama could respond, the door swung open. This time, a third man entered. A sergeant. He glanced at Obama, then at the younger officer. Fingerprint results just came in, the sergeant said. The older officer reappeared behind him, his expression faltering. The sergeant hesitated. We need to talk. Outside. The officers left, the door slightly ajar. Obama strained to hear. Clean. No record. Doesn't make sense. What if we're wrong? The door reopened. The sergeant stepped inside. You're free to go. Obama stood slowly. That's it? The sergeant nodded. That's it. The aftermath. Barack Obama stepped out into the cold night air. The door of the police station clicked shut behind him. The weight of the past few hours pressed heavily against his chest. But his face remained composed. The street was empty, except for the occasional passing car, headlights slicing through the dim glow of the flickering street lamps. He stood there for a moment, breathing in deeply. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. They had assumed the worst. Not because of his actions. Because of his appearance. Because of his skin color. And if it could happen to him, it could happen to anyone. His fists clenched at his sides. This wasn't just an experiment anymore. It was a wake-up call. And something had to change. Obama's undercover experiment, the truth he exposed. As Obama walked out of the police station, the sting of humiliation still clung to him. His wrists bore the faint red marks of the handcuffs, a reminder that, stripped of his identity, he had been reduced to just another suspect. But beneath the anger, something else burned, determination. The young officer's hesitation lingered in his mind. A crack in the system's indifference. A sign that change was possible. But first, he had a choice: retreat to safety or go deeper into the reality he sought to expose. He chose to keep going. A revelation under the overpass. The streets were quiet as Obama searched for Walter. When he finally found him among a cluster of tents, Walter's eyes narrowed. Barry? Thought they locked you up for good. Not this time, Obama said, offering a faint smile. Walter noticed the bruises on his wrists and let out a bitter laugh. You're lucky. Most of us don't walk out of there in one piece. Obama exhaled, his gaze sweeping across the camp. It's not right. None of it. We know that, Walter said. Problem is, no one listens. Obama met his eyes. Maybe it's time someone made them. After a long pause, Obama reached into his pocket, pulling out an ID he had hidden before going undercover. He placed it between them. Walter squinted at the card, then at Obama. Is this a joke? It's real, Obama said. I was president. Now I'm just trying to understand what's happening to people like you. Walter let out a sharp laugh, half impressed, half pissed. So you got arrested on purpose? To prove a point? To understand, Obama corrected. And to change it. Walter studied him. What now? Now? Obama said. We go back to the station. Exposing the truth. Walking into the police station as Barack Obama, not Barry, was a different experience. The receptionist's eyes widened as she fumbled for the intercom. Chief, you need to come out here. Now. The station's commanding officer emerged, his face pale. Mr. Obama? What are you doing here? We need to talk, Obama said. Inside the chief's office, he laid it all out, the unjust arrest, the systemic failures, the reality faced by people like Walter every day. He spoke not as a victim, but as a leader. This isn't about me, he finished. It's about the people who don't have a voice. And it has to stop. The chief swallowed hard. You're right. Obama wasn't naive. He knew one conversation wouldn't change the system. But it was a start. The fight begins. By the time they stepped out of the station, the sun was setting. Walter turned to Obama. You think they'll listen? Obama's expression was steady. They don't have a choice. What started as an undercover experiment turned into a nationwide movement. His arrest video went viral, sparking protests across the country. News anchors debated, politicians scrambled to respond, and Obama used his voice to demand real change. He pushed for police reform, anti-bias training, and independent oversight. Not everyone was on his side. Critics called him divisive. Police unions fought back. Death threats piled up. But he didn't stop. A new chapter. Weeks turned into months. Walter's homeless camp became a fully funded shelter, providing food, medical care, and a safe space for those in need. You did it, Walter said. We did it, Obama corrected. But Walter shook his head. They'll forget about us eventually. Not this time, Obama said firmly. Through his foundation, he expanded shelters nationwide, pushed for policy changes, and fought against homelessness, poverty, and systemic racism. There were setbacks. Lawsuits. Political backlash. Threats. But the movement kept growing. Then one day, Obama received a letter. It was from the young officer who had hesitated during his arrest. I should have stopped it, but I didn't. I let fear win. I'm sorry. I'm trying to be better. It was small. But it meant everything. Because change wasn't just about policy. It was about people. And as long as even one person was willing to change, the fight was worth it. The verdict that shook the system. In court, Obama sat at the plaintiff's table, his hands clasped, his heart steady. The judge's voice rang through the room. This is not an isolated incident. It is a symptom of a broken system. Then came the words that shook the country. The defendants are found guilty of discriminatory practices, abuse of authority, and gross misconduct. Gasps. Murmurs. Reporters scribbling notes. The officers involved were suspended. Reforms were mandated nationwide. It was a victory, but far from the end. Beyond justice, building the future. With momentum on his side, Obama didn't stop at police reform. He expanded shelters, legal clinics, job training programs, giving communities real solutions. The impact was immediate, but the fight was endless. Late one night, Michelle found him at his desk, papers stacked high. You can't fix everything, she said gently. I know, Obama admitted. But I have to try. She squeezed his hand. And you will. The legacy of change. The next day, Obama stood before thousands, his voice unwavering. We cannot wait for change. We must build it, together. The crowd erupted. But as he stepped off the stage, his thoughts were already on the next battle. Because the fight wasn't over. It never would be. But as long as people were willing to stand up, to push forward, There was hope. And that hope was enough to keep him going.